Welcome back to the podcast. On today's episode, we have a VIP.
Brittany Quick-Warner.
That's right, the CEO of the Chamber of Commerce, where we are here right now. It's amazing. You can see that Ivan right now he's wearing a hat for the second time in a row. This is my first time, so.
So my excuse is that I need a haircut. What's yours?
I took too much off. What's up, Eugene? You're listening to the Eugene Morning Hustle podcast, brought to you by the Eugene Area Chamber of Commerce. We're your hosts, Brandon Miller and Ivan Torres, and like us, we know you'd like to know what's going on in your city, socially, economically, civically, and culturally. From events to guest interviews and professional and personal development tips, each week we bring you stories of local business owners, advocates, leaders, and everyday Eugenians, sharing how they've strengthened their roots to reach a little deeper in our community, and how you can too. Today, we are joined by Brittany Quick-Warner, the CEO of the Chamber of Commerce, and we're going to learn a little bit about what the Chamber of Commerce does, her background, and what initiatives she's working on. So welcome to the podcast, Brittany.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for having me. And I don't think most folks start this way, but I just wanted to start with a thank you because both of you have brought this incredible idea to have this podcast to tell stories about people and businesses and organizations in our community. And we're incredibly grateful for what you're doing. So thank you. And I'm excited to finally be on here.
Yeah, well, it's been a long time coming. So we're excited to have you on this episode here.
Yeah.
So, well, first off, could you just walk us back to what life was like before the Chamber of Commerce? I mean, have you always...
My childhood? What do you...
Yeah. We're going way back.
Okay, well, I was born in Kansas. No, I won't go that far back. I have been with the Chamber for a little over 12 years. I moved to Oregon in 2012. Originally, I am from the Kansas City area.
Tornado country, right?
I was, yeah. And actually, I have an atmospheric science degree from the University of Missouri. I was a dual major with broadcast journalism and atmospheric science. I was going to be a meteorologist my entire life. From seeing Twister for the first time when I was like 8 years old. I was like, that's it. That's what I want. I was on the tornado chasing team in college.
Okay. Yeah, well, it's a thing in the Midwest.
Oh, my goodness. You did it for real.
For real. We had like raincoats with our name across the back as our jerseys. It was a thing. Anyway, so obviously I am not doing that anymore. After graduating with my undergrad, I wasn't quite sure where in that space I wanted to be. And so ultimately I went back, got my master's degree in public policy and public administration with an emphasis in nonprofit management. My passion has always been for community service, community engagement. My mom will always tell the story that I think I was around 8 years old when I went and testified at my first city council meeting.
Wow.
Yeah, I was.
Do you know what it was for?
There was this park near our home. My family grew up not with a ton of money, and we had this park near our home that we visited every day. And I was always picking up trash and, trying to keep it clean. And I finally was like, why am I doing this? Why am I, as a little kid, in charge of this? And my mom and dad explained, like, the city park, like, we pay our taxes, they, take care of it. Or in this case, what I felt like wasn't taking care of it. So anyways, I marched down to City Hall and I gave them my piece about how 8-year-old kids should not have to clean up the park.
That is amazing.
We'll see. I'm sure the details have been filled in over the years.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly how it all went down, but all I know is that they empowered me to go say my piece. And I think from that point on, I was just hooked on how people can get engaged in the civic process and how it intertwines with our everyday lives and what we're doing, and how if we don't, then who is?
Yeah.
So grad school, I knew I wanted to do something, be in a space where I was helping people, where I was, giving back to the community, and ultimately ended up finding myself in Eugene, Oregon, after I graduated grad school, and through happenstance ended up meeting Dave Hauser, the former Chamber CEO, and we just hit it off right off the bat. And he didn't have a position at the Chamber at that point, but said, hey, I have some part-time, just like project-oriented work you could do for me while you're looking for something full-time. And so I sold ads for the magazine for the Chamber for about 3 months. I was very bad at it. I was like, this is not my future, being a salesperson. But Dave was incredibly gracious, and I think he was happy to have any kind of help he could get in that space. And then ultimately ended up meeting Chris Pryor, who's a former city councilor who was working at United Way at the time, and they had a volunteer manager position opening up. And so I ended up applying there and getting hired at United Way. So I was with United Way for about 8 months and just learned so much about that organization. And then ultimately a position came back open in the chamber. And even the short 3 months I was in the role, I just knew the chamber world was so interesting to me, this intersection between business and government and community, and how those three entities working better can essentially create a stronger community. And so I came back over here, and I always loved sort of the parallel between United Way and the chamber. I think we're doing very similar work. They maybe have like a nonprofit base as their kind of core audience, and we have a business base as our core audience, but both organizations are working towards building a stronger local community. And so anyways, I've always enjoyed being able to draw some parallels between that work.
Very nice. So how did becoming the CEO come into this?
Yeah.
Then? So because you're at United Way.
That wasn't my plan. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So how did that happen?
So I came back over to the chamber. There was an events manager position open. So came over as a part-time event manager and did that again for probably about 8 months. And then the director of business advocacy position came open, and I had sort of been watching from the sidelines, seeing and recognizing that is where my heart and my passion is just, advocating, working with local government, working with city and county elected officials, helping them understand and telling the story of what business does for a community and how we can represent business more effectively, and how policies that people are considering impact businesses for good or bad. And so when that position came open, I just kind of went into Dave's office and I lobbied for myself. I said, I know I'm an event manager, but really this work is what I've been trained to do, what I would love to do. And again, he took a chance on me and said, okay, let's see what you can do. And so I moved into that role, and it was a big learning curve for me. Obviously not being from this community, I had to learn all of the players in that position. But yeah, I loved it. I fell in love with it in day one. And it's an interesting position because, frankly, as a chamber of commerce, our job is to represent the local business community. And I work with the business community every single day. I would say that it is, in our community especially, our business community is aligned with what the greater community wants to see. There might be nuances in the way we would approach a specific problem or how we would like to see something executed. But the reality is like not every single time we took a position as a chamber did it align 100% perfectly with my personal position that I would have taken on that. And that's something that I learned really quickly is, okay, you have to be able to truly represent the folks that you are working for. But the way that I feel like we do that at the chamber, we're so focused on being data-driven, not being, sort of Chicken Little, right? The sky is falling. Everything's going to crumble tomorrow if we don't do X, Y, or Z. Very focused on not being hyperbolic, telling true and authentic stories on behalf of our businesses so people hear the real impacts of the policies that we're considering. And so doing that and advocating in that way absolutely fell in alignment with what I believe is true and right. And so even if it's not 100% exactly as myself as an individual would agree with a policy, it's super easy to say, yeah, but we are impacting businesses and they deserve a voice, and that's what we're here to do. I would say it's very rare that it's not something that I'm like, yeah, I agree and I believe this 100%. But I just think that, any person in an organization who's representing an organization or in an elected official role or anything who's representing a body of people, you have to walk into the job knowing that I'm not going to align personally with these individuals 100% of the time, but my job is to represent them. My job is to make sure they have a voice. And that's the role of the chamber. And so I loved that job. I thought I'd be in it forever. And tragically, our former CEO was diagnosed with cancer and passed away shortly thereafter. And he had, when he first was diagnosed and starting to go through treatment, had asked me and said, hey, can you just fill in for me for 5 weeks while I go through treatment? And I said, yes, of course, I can do anything for 5 weeks, right? Dave was my mentor and friend, and I just I adored him and learned so much about the chamber, the community, everything through him. And so I said, whatever I can do to help. And then ultimately, those 5 weeks turned into several other rounds of treatment. And Dave passed away in June of 2017. And I, at that point, had been in the interim position for a couple months just because we had some hiring to do and things like that. And Dave had recommended to the board that I kind of get appointed in an interim CEO role so I could help do some of that. And then when Dave passed away, our board chair at that point, Mandy Jones, came to me and said, hey, a few days after he passed, said, the board has to make a decision about where we're going next. Are you interested in this role? And I said, absolutely not. I can't do this. I'm 30 years old. I was grieving, the loss of Dave. I was feeling incredibly overwhelmed by all of it. It just was like, this is not the job for me. I love the chamber. I want to stay working in, as an advocacy director. And so I told her no. And then I think Mandy had the wherewithal to give me a couple weeks to get my head back on straight. And I sort of, have this like weird kind of movie-esque experience that I'll never forget. I was like taking the trash out or something silly. And I had this moment of thinking to myself, hearing Dave in the back of my head saying, what are you thinking? Of course you want this job. Like, why did you tell her no? And then Mandy happened to reach out a couple days later. She's like, okay, I just want to give you another chance. Like, have you thought more about it? And I was like, actually, I have. I know that I won't do this like Dave did. I have a ton to learn. I am going to be coming into this job with just different skill sets, different, ideas of how it should be done. But I am interested. If it's something the board, wants to consider me as a candidate, I'd be honored for them to do so. And so the board went through a process and had a selection process and talked to candidates, and they included me in that process. And then ultimately I was appointed CEO in September of 2017. Yeah, it was a wild ride. Not at all where I thought I would end up as a 30-year-old, relatively still new to Eugene.
Wow.
Yeah.
No, that's incredibly inspiring. It sounds like you had a brilliant mentor.
Yeah.
It sounds like, you're there to be this objective voice for the community.
Yeah. I talk to a lot of people, young people, my peers about, you don't realize in the moment that like, there's a time and there's a place and there's a conversation that can be so impactful for the rest of your career and the rest of the trajectory of your life. And there were so many of those in that probably 8-month period. But Mandy Jones, who was the former CEO of Oregon Community Credit Union, happened to be our board chair at the time. And I owe her so much for giving me some time, giving me some grace, encouraging me, being a mentor and an advocate for me. And so yeah, I will never forget what she did. I will never forget the role that she played in my life. And it really it helps you recognize you can do that and be that for other people, especially whenever you take a minute to recognize those folks in your life too. So huge appreciation to Mandy and so many other people in that time period and now still, of course. But yeah, it was a crazy time.
Wow. Crazy ride going in.
Yeah.
Did it get wilder after? What was the first?
No, it was super easy. As soon as I got in the role, I was like, oh, I got this. This is great.
That was our curiosity. It's like, okay, so now you're in the role. What adventures await?
Oh my gosh. It was so hard that first year. Well, I mean, the last several years. That first year was difficult. And just to be, really honest and vulnerable, it was really hard to find my voice because, coming behind Dave, who was so beloved in this community and so good at his job and had done so much, he'd been in the role for 25 years. I spent a lot of time trying to figure out what Dave would do and trying to sort of fit myself into that persona. And it took a while for me to really feel like this is awkward. I'm not fulfilling my sort of highest and best case in this position because I'm trying to be somebody else. And so it took a while to sort of get, feel comfortable in my own skin. And just as I was doing that, the pandemic hit. So then it was just another curveball where, of course, nobody knew what to do in that situation. There wasn't, it's not that I was new and I didn't know. It was nobody knew. So that took me a minute to sort of also be if I'd been here longer, if I had more skills, I could navigate this differently. And the reality is everybody was doing this for the first time. And so once I sort of, allowed myself to believe that, I was like, okay, lean into things that you're good at. call on others to help for the things that you're not. And frankly, we've had a great team over the last several years, and it's changed. We've had a lot of transition in our staff and in our board, and all for like good reasons. And I'm wholeheartedly a believer in organizations go through phases, and there's the right people for the right time. And so I was lucky that we kept having the right people at the right time, and that has evolved in the time that I've been here. So yeah, it was hard. And then I had my own personal sort of trauma through that, which I've been public about. But my husband and I, trying to have kids, had a really rough go at it. We had several miscarriages, ended up doing IVF. And so to add that layer on top of just being a new CEO and trying to learn what I'm doing and navigating a global pandemic, let's just say the last couple of years I've been like, whew, okay, do I get a normal year yet? Like how many years in this job before I'm just like, okay, let's just have one whole year of nothing traumatic happening. So I'm still waiting for that.
You're waiting for the other shoe to drop. I get it.
Yeah. But I'm lucky. Our chamber is in a very strong place. We've had an incredible board of directors. And I said when I got into this job, I remember I was very intentional. Even in the interview, I said, look, I need a different board of directors than Dave, my predecessor, had. He'd been here for 25 years, right? He knew what he needed. The board, they didn't have to be as hands-on. I need my board of directors to be very hands-on, to be challenging my ideas, to be poking holes in things, to be, bringing me resources, calling me out whenever I need to look for, if I have a blind spot. And they've been amazing at that. And I think that it's been really helpful for me to develop as a leader because I have this board that essentially answered the call when I said, I need you to be more, actively engaged with developing me as a leader. And so I've been lucky to see that. And I think our organization obviously has benefited from that as well. And we're in a really strong place. Our staff is incredible. We are increasing members year over year, which not a lot of chambers across the country can say that. It's been a rough go for chambers of commerce through the pandemic. We have, our revenues are strong, our staffing is strong. We just are in this position where it feels like, okay, we're not coming at this from a scarcity mindset right now. There's an abundance of opportunity, and our chamber is definitely feeling like, okay, what can we tackle next? And so we've been talking about that as an organization.
Wow. No, I think that's great that you were able to see that you needed help having a new board. Yeah. I feel like that's something that a lot of people might not notice about themselves, is that I think we need some people that can really push me. Yeah. And so I think that's fantastic that you were able to reach out and form that. So
yeah, I've been lucky.
Well, so speaking of the Chamber of Commerce, right? For those that are listening who may not know what the Chamber of Commerce
does,
what
is a Chamber of Commerce, anyways?
Let's kind of dispel that. Let's kind of talk about this and bring to light what the Chamber of Commerce does, how it interacts with the community, and because I think a lot of what happens with the Chamber of Commerce, people are experiencing that, but don't know that that's part of what the Chamber of Commerce is doing.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that.
So let's start with what it's not.
Yeah.
So there was a recent kind of national poll done around people's awareness of knowledge of chambers of commerce. And it was, just north of 60% of folks either thought the chamber was a government, kind of an arm of the government or funded by the government, or they just weren't sure if it was or not. It's not. We are a private nonprofit. So we're a 501c6 nonprofit, which means that we're a membership-based organization. But as a nonprofit, we have a mission and a vision and a board of directors that oversees and governs us. We are not funded by the local government. We partner with them a lot, and we have a lot of opportunities that I think come to fruition in this community because our chamber has a strong relationship with our government partners. But we are not at all sort of tied to that. We're also not tied to any other national or state level chambers of commerce. So we're all independently run. We might be a part of associations and, glean information from. The chamber network across the country is incredible. I think it's one of the best things about this industry is that I have a dozen chamber CEOs on speed dial, and we're always calling and sharing best practices. And how did you navigate this? And is your community dealing with homelessness like we are? And how are you addressing the housing shortage? And not a lot of industries have that deep of sort of like interconnectivity, which is
you're not
really
competing,
cool.
right?
Yeah.
Like you're not competing.
No
Exactly.
Every community is unique to its where it is, right? So,
Exactly. And there's a lot of problems that we all share, right? We're not unique in some of the challenges we're facing. So we're not that. We're not tied to another organization, structurally. We are, like I said, a 501c6 membership-based organization. Our chamber has a little bit over 1,200 members. Makes us kind of second or third largest in the state. We bounce back and forth between a couple communities. We have a board of directors. We have 18 board of director members who really govern the role of the chamber, or govern the work of the chamber, if you will. We have 3 kind of main areas of focus. So member services, or kind of business development, is one bucket. I like to say that our staff are professional problem solvers. We are getting calls all day long from businesses and organizations in the community who have a problem that they need someone to help fix. And our chamber is, I always say, our guarantee is that we can either help you fix it or we know someone who can help you fix it. We're so connected in this community that we can find the right path to getting an answer for you. Or resources to help you find an answer. And so that's a big piece of what we do. And sometimes it's very surgical. It's one-on-one, like, let me help you with this specific problem. And sometimes it's, hey, let's provide some business training on leadership development. Let's talk about, what are some of the government regulations coming down and how do you actually, adhere to those and implement changes within your organizations. And we're putting on workshops and seminars and things like that. So that's a big piece of it. And then the second bucket really is business advocacy. So we are an advocacy-based organization. We take positions on issues. We really try to educate the community and our elected officials and government partners on how things impact business. I talked a little bit about that. And so we spend a lot of time. We attend all the city council meetings and county commission meetings, and we spend time at the state legislature understanding what policies are being considered at the state level. We work with locally at the state and at the federal level on federal issues as well. So we have a strong relationship with our federal delegation. And we tend to say businesses don't have time to do that. They don't have time to show up at all those meetings and pay attention and keep their eyes and ears open to that. And so that's why the chamber is there doing it for them. And we really get to influence the conversation because we also then have this huge network of businesses that we're calling on to help us understand how this issue is going to impact them, right? So we have a lot of elected officials or city or county staff that call us and say, hey, can you help connect us with X, Y, and Z industry leaders so I can ask them specific questions about this thing? And then the third area that we are focused in is economic development. So in the economic development world, they talk about really 3 legs of the stool. There's business recruitment. So how are you bringing new business to a community? There's business retention and expansion. So the companies already exist here. How are you helping them grow? There's a stat that 80% of the jobs are created in a community are created by the companies that already exist. So you really need to do some care and feeding of those companies to make sure our overall economy is growing, that they are growing and succeeding. And then the third area really is startup businesses. So how are you creating an environment or an ecosystem where someone who has an idea can actually take that idea from, their head and put it into practice as a business in your community? So our chamber has worked in all of those areas for a long time. But specifically, we did a lot of our work in business retention and expansion. And through, multiple organizations in the community kind of growing and dying and transitioning and evolving, we ultimately ended up founding in 2020 a 501c3, kind of subsidiary, if you will, organization in the chamber called Onward Eugene. And what we did is we said, let's take this economic development work, a piece that the chamber's doing and other pieces that other organizations had done in the past. Let's pull them together under one roof. Let's have a cohesive strategy for how we do this, and let's bring private sector to the table to help them fund and lead that work in our community. And so Onward Eugene was born in January of 2020. 5 minutes later, this pandemic hits. And so we spent a lot of time in that space working over the last couple years, business support, business response, how do we help businesses stay alive through the pandemic? And so coming out of that, we're in a place where our board of directors said, okay, what's the next 5 years look like, the next 10 years? Who does the chamber and Onward need to be going forward? How do we serve this community better? and ultimately have come up with a 5-year strategic initiative to really drive an economic development strategy for our overarching region that's led by businesses. And so we'll be working really closely with partners across the region to help implement what we're calling Elevate 2028.
Wow, that rolls off the tongue. Somebody was thinking about that.
Someone was thinking about it. Yeah. So we, like I said, our board of directors really, both of the chamber and Onward Eugene, wanted us to think differently about how can we influence the local economy. What is, now that we're sort of in the shadows of the pandemic, or coming out of, the shadows of the pandemic, what is it that businesses are facing today, maybe that they weren't in the past, and or that they're facing today that we've got to figure out a way to solve for, right? And so we went out and we talked to hundreds of businesses just to understand what exactly is keeping you up at night. What are the challenges that are really facing your business and our community? And we heard, frankly, a lot of the same stuff that we've been hearing for a lot of years. There's some nuance to it, and there's definitely some pieces that feel different than maybe they did before the pandemic, but ultimately, it's a lot of the same things that our community has faced for a while. And one thing that we heard is when we asked businesses, how are you feeling about the economic trend in the community, the economic business climate in the community, is that almost every single one said they feel like it's flat or it's decreasing. And so to us, that was a call to action. There is absolutely this feeling in the community that some of these challenges are starting to overwhelm us to a point where people are feeling like that we're to the point of no return. And they're losing hope. And to me, there's all these challenges we have to solve for, but hopelessness is even dire than any of that, right? Because you can't solve really big, hairy problems with a bunch of people who feel hopeless that you can even do it. And so that was really a red flag and a trigger for our organization to say, okay, what are we going to do differently? How are we going to address this? Ultimately, we kind of did what we know is something we lean back on a lot, and that's let's look at best practices. What are other communities across this country doing to address some of these issues? What are some different ways to think about how we go about this? And ultimately, we ended up contracting with an organization nationally who does economic development, sort of strategic planning for communities, but then also attaches resources to those plans so you can actually execute. And so we did a feasibility study last fall where those consultants went and met with about 40 different business and community leaders, asked a few things. They said, does the chamber have the trust and the capacity to do this work? What are the challenges you're facing? What are some of the solutions that you see to those challenges? And would you consider, coming to the table as a funder to help make this happen? And ultimately, we got a nod from those businesses. And what we heard is while they're feeling very frustrated and in some cases bordering on apathy, they still felt like we could do something about it, right? So they were coming to the table saying, okay, let's go. If we're going to do it, we're going to throw a Hail Mary, let's throw it. And so we developed with the support of those folks this 5-year strategic initiative, Elevate 28, to address kind of the 4 core problems that we heard most loudly from folks. The first is that there's a lot of work that we can do on building out sectors and recruiting business and talent to our community and addressing some of the deep kind of rooted community issues we face. But ultimately, if we don't make sure that we're standing on a strong economic foundation and we have the culture to do this type of work, it's not actually going to be successful. And folks felt like the business climate here, there's a perception that it's not very business friendly, both internally and externally, and that Eugene and Lane County and Oregon is not a very business friendly place. And so that is a reputation. And again, whether it's perception or reality, it becomes reality. That is a reputation that if we don't figure out a way to actually address, all of this other work that we're going to do will not be nearly as successful as if we really dealt with how do we build a stronger business climate in this community. So that became the first challenge that we knew we had to address, is how do we create a pro-business perception and culture in this community. The second is just the fundamental work of growing jobs in business and investment. We just aren't very sophisticated as a community in how we do that compared to other places. And we do a good job of reacting, and we do a good job of coming together whenever someone comes to us with a problem. or an opportunity. We work well with government partners, between all of us, we usually get the assignment done, but it feels like we're recreating the wheel every single time. We aren't sort of proactively addressing these opportunities. We're not going out to businesses and saying, what's your growth opportunities? What are the challenges that you see in 5 years that we can try to solve for now? Usually we hear about those when they're in the face of a business, right? They're like, I have a problem, please help us. We want to anticipate those problems. We want to break down barriers before they become a barrier for that business to grow. And we're not great as a region, at least in the last decade or so, in proactively bringing new companies here. We don't have a regional marketing strategy. We don't have a regional brand that we're using when we're telling the story of who we are. So that work in other places is being done in just a lot more sophisticated fashion. And I don't think it's going to take a lot for us to get there, but we have to put time and effort into getting there if we're going to be more proactive. So that's really the second place, is growing business, jobs, and investment in a proactive way. The third was around talent, and businesses still really feeling like there's a challenge with talent. Keeping young people here out of university or community colleges, and actually, finding them a place to stay in this community, recruiting people from out of town if it's for a highly skilled job. We spent a lot of time talking to the healthcare industry about how much they are struggling recruiting doctors, recruiting healthcare professionals to this community. So that's a big piece of it. And then there's this huge resource in the chamber and our young professionals network that we've built and grown over the last decade, that we can be using those relationships and those networks more, I think, strategically by figuring out what they want, right? Let's develop an agenda from our young professionals that say, if this community is going to be a place that keeps me, this is what I need in it. And so we want to glean some of that so we can do a better job at keeping and retaining and recruiting talent to this community. And then the third area was really around just the quality of life and place barriers that get in the way of us keeping talent in businesses, right? So we have a serious housing crisis in this community. It is unaffordable, and there's not a lot of vacancy as far as finding housing, no matter what level of housing you're looking for. If it's high end or if it's affordable housing, we have a massive gap in that, and that's causing a lot of workforce economic challenges. We have a homeless crisis that is obvious across the community. We have a childcare shortage. We have anywhere from 1,500 to 2,500 childcare slots short in our community based on the number of kiddos from 0 to 5 years old. And that is really burdensome to families who are trying to get back into the workplace, to employers who have staff that have, unstable childcare and they're not showing up for work, or they have to rearrange schedules, et cetera. So it really does create an impact on the local economy. And then the last thing that we heard from a lot of folks was whether it's recruiting or retaining young people or, trying to attract somebody to this community. In a lot of places, when you go and you visit, where do you go first? You go downtown. You go to the heart of the community. You go to this place that really should be sort of the living room for your community to see what it's all about. And a lot of folks feel like our downtown right now is more of a liability than an asset for our community. And without some very proactive, concerted work to improve that, we're losing people because they don't feel like we have that, that central kind of gathering place and that really kind of vibrant hub of activity and energy. And so we know that downtown is important to the broader community, and it's something holding us back. So with all those challenges kind of laid out in front of us, again, spent a lot of time looking at what are other places doing successfully, what have we done in the past successfully that we can lean into, and we just mapped out 4 goals aligning exactly with those 4 challenges to address over the next 5 years. And we got real specific with strategies and tactics that we feel like can move the needle if we're very disciplined and we're moving forward and we're bringing partners together. And that kind of is what makes up this Elevate 28 plan. And then key to doing all of this is that we are going out to the private sector and we're fundraising. We're trying to raise a little bit less than $5 million over the next 5 years to essentially resource this plan, to bring in the right people who can help make these things happen. And more importantly, putting business leaders back sort of leading the conversation about what our community and our economy needs to actually thrive. And shifting from a place where, as a chamber, we have membership that's, really supporting a lot of the work that we do, which is great and incredible. And we're talking about going above and beyond. So we're not shifting or changing what we're currently doing. We're just trying to do more better. We need businesses to be the leaders in this, not the chamber. It's not about me. It's not about our staff members sort of being the face of this. We need business leaders to be the face of this. And we think that the core of all of this being successful is building stronger relationships. We need stronger relationships between businesses and our government partners, between each other. Because with that, I think when you know each other better, you understand each other better, and you can represent each other better. And the leading kind of challenge in all of this being the business climate, in order to change that, our government partners have to know who our businesses are, what they need, how they can help them. And our business leaders need to be the one coming to those conversations and offering it up. And frankly, coming to the conversations with innovative and creative ideas about how to solve problems that government partners might need help with too, right? It's a mutual relationship. It's not just a what can you give me, but what can I bring to the conversation? And so, relationship building should not be controversial.
Right,
This is not a
absolutely.
partisan effort.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This is just about getting people in a room without an agenda and getting to know each other. I would love for any of our city councilors to have a dozen businesses on speed dial across industries, across different types and sizes, that if, they run into a question sitting at the city council table, they know, oh, wow, okay, I have a couple business leaders in my ward that I've talked to a handful of times, and I know that this is something that might interface, with their reality. I'm going to get a hold of them. And I'm going to find out, how could this impact you? And they're not afraid to pick up the phone and call because they know that person. They've had coffee a dozen times. They've gone out to lunch. They've toured their business. They know who they are, and they can trust that they're coming to the conversation without personal interest in mind, right? This is about something bigger than just your individual business. This is about creating a community that, one, your business can live on beyond you, but that your kids can live in, that they can come back to, that they can grow a business or a family here. And so it's about creating a legacy and a community that will outlast all of us. And businesses are getting excited and they're coming to the table.
That's great.
Yeah.
For businesses that are out there that have never been out there, how does one get involved? How does one find out about the meetings?
So we're just launching this initiative. We are kind of diving into this work right now. We have, our goal is to raise about $4.625 million, and so we're still out there fundraising. So if businesses want to be investors in this, we're really treating it like an investment opportunity. And these investors are going to play really active roles in driving and frankly being sort of the strategic supporters of this work. And so if folks want to be at that table, it's open, and we want everyone who is interested to come to the table, business, nonprofit, whoever you are. This is a community effort. And then there's going to be a lot of work to be done in the next 5 years to actually see this thing to fruition. We are not so naive to think we're going to solve all of these problems in 5 years, right? We're not going to solve our homeless crisis in 5 years because it took decades to get here. But if we take proactive steps to move the needle in a little bit in each of these different ways, we're going to build the momentum that I think our community has been desperate for to then see that grow over time. We'll have all kinds of sort of focus groups and opportunities for businesses to, or business people or community members to kind of step up and say, hey, childcare, like that's what I'm interested in. Help me figure out how to plug in. Or I'm a young professional in this community and I want to be a part of like establishing an agenda on behalf of young professionals. All of that is on the table. So really, it's if there's a place you feel like you can plug into this, then you can, and we can figure out a way for you to do that.
So where would they go to find out that information? They're like, okay, I hear you, Brittany. What do I do next?
Yeah, so you can sort of find this plan through both the Chamber's website and Onward Eugene's website, so eugenechamber.com or onwardeugene.org, and find Elevate 28, and you can see there sort of broken down what the different goals and strategies are. And then you can see on those pages how you can join in. So we'll have briefings over the next couple months where businesses can come, individuals can come and sit and learn more. And then we'll talk about specifically how people might plug in. And then you'll see things rolling out over time. I don't know right now all the ways because we're just sort of rolling this out. But I think just pay attention. The chamber, obviously our members are going to have early and quick access to all of this. So if you aren't a chamber member, would love to have you a part of the family. But otherwise too, just reach out to myself, reach out to staff that we have here and say, hey, I heard about this. I really want to know more. Can you keep me on an interested parties list so I can be informed when there's elements of this initiative rolling out?
Well, that's great. So I'm curious as to, as people find out kind of where they fit into this, right? Looking at it, like you kind of said, objectively, right? Yeah. Not really bringing any personal bias to it, just objectively for our community, for their business, things like that. What sort of messaging do you have for those out there to kind of, improve the communication between these different people in our community to help move things forward?
Yeah, for us, really, it's about connecting the dots for folks on how business success begets community success, right? In order for our community to succeed, we have to have successful businesses. And I think that because we have such a polarizing national sort of narrative right now, people want to find enemies. People are quick to figure out who is my enemy here? Who is the person or the entity or the thing that is making me feel this way? And a lot of times people point to business, like business is bad. They're the bad guy. They're the ones we need to blame all our problems on. And really, we have got to change that narrative. Businesses are not bad. Businesses, just like anyone across the community, there's a bad apple here and there, right? Like maybe there's, an interaction that you had with someone that wasn't particularly lovely, and now you have a bad perception in your head of that, right? That is going to happen all across the community. What I can say is I work with hundreds and hundreds of business leaders all day, all month, all year. And these individuals are community members. They're people whose kids go to our schools and who shop at our grocery stores and who invest in our nonprofits, who are showing up at, their church groups and their community, organizations. They are part of our community. And they happen to be providing jobs for individuals, right? And so in order for people to have and live happy, healthy lives, they need income. They need a way to pay for their basic needs. They need a place to live, and they need a roof over their house, and they need childcare for their kids, and they need good health care. And without a strong business climate, not only can they not have jobs to do that, but the businesses are providing those services, right? And so we are so interdependent upon each other. And I think it's so important for us to change that narrative, and the chamber can do a better job of connecting the dots for people, right? Our businesses, private property taxes contribute a lot more to the community than residential and an individual resident. Our businesses pay property taxes. Our businesses pay payroll taxes to help, improve our public safety system. They are financially contributing to make this community as strong and good as it can be. They also have the same values as, we do as a community. They don't want to see Lane County paved over. We all value this incredible climate that we live in, this beautiful place. We are a unique and wonderful place to live because of that. And so it doesn't help business to burn that all down. That's not the point, right? We all want to protect and save that, these wonderful assets that our community has. And so to come to the table and recognize we're actually not that far apart. We're a lot more aligned than I think, other, a national sort of narrative might want us to think or believe. And I think that most people, when you peel back all the layers, we just want the same core things. We want our kids to be safe and happy. We want health for each other. We want a place to live and something fun to do on the weekends, right?
And you just said, and that's peeling away those layers to say, these are the core beliefs that we have in our community. We all want that. 3 of us here want that.
Yeah.
Everyone listening, you want that.
Yeah.
That's the whole reason we live here.
Yeah.
So
it doesn't have to be polarizing. It doesn't have to be rude or mean. It can be authentic and, curious, we can come to the table and say, you have different opinions than I do. I'm curious about that. Like, let's talk about how we got there and how we can move something forward together, even though we might approach it a little bit differently. And I think that what I have heard from the business community is that they are ready to do that. They want to be leaders in that conversation. And I think we're going to make a lot of progress because of that.
That's great. So, yeah, I mean, you said earlier that, the Chamber of Commerce can't fix this stuff alone, right? It comes down to the leaders in our community, right?
Yeah.
What can they do right now as they're listening and they're like, okay, I'm bought in. I want to help. Okay, so what's the next step for me to do that?
I mentioned coming and joining this family, right? The Chamber of Commerce represents nonprofits and individuals and businesses, and we're a collective impact organization. Someone pays a little bit in their membership and they help contribute to a whole lot of work in the community. So I'm always going to say, come be a part of us, right? Come be a part of this organization. And then I also think to start paying attention, to really thinking about and getting to know who are the businesses in your neighborhood, who are the people behind those businesses in your neighborhood. When you show up at the coffee shop in the morning, who owns that coffee shop? Ask them how's business? How is running this business? How is running, what does this neighborhood mean to you? I think just building relationships, right? And we've, again, coming out of a pandemic where people really were, we were insular. We weren't out asking questions and talking and getting in people's faces and understanding who they were. And we have to remember how to do that again. We have to relearn how to sort of build relationships across the community. And so anyone can do that, right? You can get to know someone. So that's obviously a low-hanging fruit for anybody in the community. But also just reach out. Find out if there's a niche area for you to get involved. Like I said, we have a young professionals network that's incredible and growing, and we want to bring more young people into that conversation. We have networking opportunities. We have business groups that are getting together every single week, every Friday morning to get to know each other, to learn about each other's businesses. We have Government Affairs Council, who's meeting weekly to really understand the issues facing our businesses. Chamber members are able to be a part of that council. There's a lot of ways to get involved. We have a new women's network that we're launching to really help with professional development, leadership development of women in our community. Yeah, so there's a place. There's a place for everyone, and just pick up the phone and call, and we'll find a spot for you.
Oh, I love it.
Love that.
Calendar on the website?
Yes, we have an event calendar on the website. We have a lot of information there where you can kind of find some of the different programs and activities that the Chamber does.
I was just thinking about business after hours being a really good opportunity, because it's like, I work from home. I wouldn't know anybody if I, wouldn't have gone to that, So, yeah, totally get that. So,
and the summits.
Well,
Yeah.
and the summit. I mean, like you and I wouldn't even be here if it wasn't for young professionals and for the summit. So, that too. But
yeah, it's a fun way to get in a room and see that many other people here care about what you care about and are going through what you're going through. There's just a camaraderie in that you can't get from, just an online engagement.
Yeah, absolutely. Alrighty, everybody. So we're to that part of the show where we get to know our guests a little bit better. So, Brittany, are you ready for this?
I think so.
All right. So when you're not at work, how do you like to spend your time?
Oh my goodness. When am I not working? No, my husband and I have a 1-year-old.
Ooh.
He turned 1 on October 28th.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And so all of my free time is spent loving on that little guy. Yeah. He was born a couple months early, and so our first whole month of his life was in the NICU, which I am forever grateful for the incredible healthcare that we have in this community. Because of that, I got an up close and personal view of it. But yeah, so we're just trying to keep a child alive.
I totally feel that. My little girl was born during COVID, and just the whole birthing process.
Oh my gosh.
It was absolutely terrifying.
Yeah, it is. It's very scary. And you're like, oh yeah. I'm like, my husband and I do not eat 3 square meals a day. So now that he's getting to the point where we have to feed him 3 meals a day, I'm like, whew, okay, we can do this.
I love it. What does deepening your roots mean to you?
Ooh, deepening my roots. Good question. So I feel like there's sort of a personal side and then a community side. For me, it's kind of asking myself what lights me up. How do I sort of show up in the world in the most sort of authentic and passionate and excited way, and exploring that, because I feel like that's whenever you kind of know who you are in an authentic way, then you can just be more effective in the world. So kind of deepening your impact, your roots, your ability to kind of show up as a full person is getting to know yourself better. But then also finding out in this community, where is a place that I can serve? Where is a place that I can show up and make a difference? And then in doing that, I think you just learn your community better. You learn, where are the opportunities, where are the people doing incredible things. And that's, to me, how you really deepen your roots in a community, is to figure out, okay, who am I? What do I need to be the most fulfilled? And then where in the community can I use those skills and talent and passion? And then you get stuck and you can't ever leave.
This is what you talk about, that stickiness
yes,
factor.
It's my
you always
goal.
talk about that. So
Never leave.
Yeah.
What was the first career you dreamed of having as a child?
Oh my gosh. Okay, well, I wanted to be a race car driver.
Oh.
And then a tornado chaser.
Nice.
And that was it. And now I'm the Chamber of Commerce CEO.
And you chase.
So I deal with emergencies and I go really fast.
So yeah, our next follow-up question will be like, are you doing anything with those? And yes, you clearly are.
I know I used to joke, I'm like, wow, I have like $60,000 in student debt to be able to open my weather app on my phone, just like everybody else. No, I do feel like I learned a lot I did a lot of emergency management training, a lot of kind of emergency response training. And frankly, through the pandemic, I leaned in on a lot of those skills that I learned that I never imagined I would use again. But yeah, so we'll see. Here and there, I'm using it.
What was it like being out on the field chasing a tornado?
Oh, it was exhilarating. It was so fun.
How close did you get to one?
I've seen 3 very close. Yeah, we had sort of a base team and a field team, and you had to switch off every time. And then, when you're on the field team, I don't mind driving in bad weather, and I don't mind driving in the dark. Like, I have a good sense of direction. So I always ended up on the last leg of the drive. So I had to drive home back through the storm that we just chased across the country. And so I was always like the late night, like through the like blinding storm driver. So yeah, it was fun though. It was good. I mean, we spent a lot of time in a lot of small towns and some rural communities, and getting to know people and understanding, how do they pay attention to severe weather, and what do they do to prepare, and how do we make sure that folks who maybe aren't as connected know and understand whenever there's a serious threat coming their way. So it was crazy.
I grew up in Nebraska, and so tornadoes were a regular occurrence.
Oh, yeah.
I was not an official tornado chaser. I was probably the irresponsible tornado chaser, where it's like, okay, I probably should leave here now.
Back when I was in elementary, not elementary, it was middle school, I had a buddy who was like, we should be tornado chasers. And I fell in love with the idea. I didn't even know this was a thing. Yeah. So we would throw on these sweaters that said tornado chasers on the back. And anyways, I didn't face my first tornado until like 2 years ago when I went back to Arkansas to visit my wife's family.
Yeah.
It was the scariest thing of my life. Her family was like standing on the deck, like trying to watch it. And I'm like, no, we need to go to the cellar. They're like, it's fine. I'm like, no, go.
We have to go. It is like, you imagine it, because it's not like the movies, right? It's not like every 5 minutes. It's a whole lot of sitting in a field just staring at each other.
Right.
That's mostly what it is.
Kind of like fishing.
It's a lot like fishing. It's like 99% of the time we're like, okay, what are we doing here?
Can't even say nice weather.
Exactly. Can't even talk about the weather.
Exactly.
What is one lesson? Oh, excuse me. What is one lesson that you learned in the last 10 years that was just pivotal for you?
Okay, I have 2.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Perfect.
Okay, I have 2 lessons. One, I learned really, I talked a little bit about my story and how I got into this role, to give yourself some time and space to change your mind. You might have a gut reaction based on who you are and what you're going through in that exact moment. But if it's important enough to take some time to think about it and to contemplate, like, why did you have this first initial gut reaction? And if you're in a calmer mindset, if you're sort of more thoughtful and just more contemplative, would you have come to the same conclusion? So I think that as much as you can sort of give yourself time and space and freedom to change your mind. A lot of us feel very, a sense of pride of like, this is my decision. This is what I think. And we miss out on a lot of opportunities because we don't let ourselves be like, maybe I was wrong in that moment. I should consider something different. So that's one. And the other is in my office, I have one of those boards where you can like put the little letters in to like make a sign.
Oh, yeah.
And when I got into the CEO position, it was working super late on a Friday or Saturday night, frankly. And I found this board that someone had given me forever ago, and I never hung it up. And I was in that moment, I was like, man, like, what should I write on this? What is inspiring enough every single day that when I look at it, it's going to like help me be a better person? Not everything in your life has to be like that, but that's how my brain thinks sometimes.
Yeah.
And all I could think about was how hungry I was because I'd gone through the whole day without eating because I get so busy and so caught up in what I'm doing. And so I literally put on my sign, it just says eat lunch. And it's been there for 7 years.
Wow. Yeah.
Everyone who walks into my office is like, okay, that's some good advice. And it's like a slow down and take care of yourself.
Yeah.
Like you're never going to go further because you went through your self-care moment.
Yeah.
And so really it's like, a deeper lesson in that is like, you got to eat, you got to sleep, you got to go for a walk,
Take
you got
care
to
of
drink
yourself.
water.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah.
Eat lunch.
Eat lunch.
Yeah.
I'm going to write a book someday. Just eat lunch.
I love that.
Trademark.
That's so good.
Write
I'd
it
say
down.
trademark
No
that
one
now.
else
Yeah.
take that.
That's awesome. I love that.
Someday.
Is there anything on your bucket list that you haven't? Well, I would hope that there's still things on your bucket list. What's something on your bucket list that you haven't achieved yet?
Oh my gosh. I don't really have a bucket list, you guys. Okay, I have a couple things. I should make a bucket list someday. I have a couple of things that are rolling around my head. Professionally, our chamber has a goal to win Chamber of the Year.
Oh.
So there's a national award for chambers who are just sort of excellent in a lot of different ways and create a lot of impact in their community. And so that's a goal that we have. I think it really sort of boosts the morale of the people who are doing the hard work every day. Our staff are incredible. And so we don't seek out a whole lot of accolades, but that one is just like in the back of our heads, like someday we're going to apply for that and we're going to win it. Personally, I've always had a goal to visit and watch a baseball game in every single baseball stadium in the country.
Oh, wow.
So so that's my goal. I've hit probably about 24, so I'm getting there.
Nice.
Sweet.
Maybe a little less than 24, close. But but I haven't done the East Coast thing. So it's like my dream vacation is like 2 weeks and just like travel up the East Coast in the summer and try to hit as many stadiums. There's probably like a dozen that you could hit within an 8-hour drive. So
That's
we'll
one
see.
heck
There you
of
go.
a bucket list item right there. I don't know if I have any.
I was just
oh my
gonna
gosh,
say,
that's a huge
you
one.
hadn't have one.
I love that.
Okay, you're right. All right, I got a couple.
What's a book or a podcast that you're currently listening or reading to?
Our chamber, a handful of years ago, actually right after I got into the CEO position, I was exposed to what's called the entrepreneurial operating system. It's a sort of an internal operations process that really helps you kind of organize the way you work and operate as a business. And that first year of being CEO of the chamber, I had never even had a single person directly report to me. So I'd never supervised anyone. And overnight, I had 8 direct reports. And I've talked about I was super young. I was new into this position. I'd never had a CEO position, let alone, like I said, even supervise anyone. I spent a lot of time reading a lot of leadership books, just trying to understand like who I am as a leader and how do I lead better and, all these things. And I still never really found the thing that I felt like was going to help our organization be more successful. Anyways, I was at a chamber conference that summer and a chamber CEO introduced me to the book Traction, which is essentially the book that talks about and explains this entrepreneurial operating system and how you implement it within your organization. And as she was giving this presentation, I felt like I was at church. I was like taking notes. I'm like, I found Jesus. This is it. Okay. And I went up to her at the end almost in tears and I was like, oh my gosh, like I think you just saved my life. Like, how do I learn this? Give me everything. And I think she was like, okay, this girl is crazy. I have some pity on her. Just take my book. I read the entire thing on the plane ride home, and I was totally hooked. It's not brilliant, it's not rocket science, but it really simplifies like a system that you can implement as a business or as an organization to help you be more disciplined, to help you hold yourself and your staff more accountable, to really clarify what is your goal, what is your vision, who do you want to be in the next 1, 3, 10 years, and It was built with for-profit companies in mind, but I have a very strong feeling that nonprofit organizations, nonprofit is your tax status, not your business plan, right? Like you still have to be able to bring in, revenue to cover the expenses that you're trying to, or that you have to incur. And when you're an organization like ours trying to change the world, like, if you want to do more in the community, you have to be thinking about, okay, how do we grow our revenues? How do we increase our impact? And it really helped us put a light on all of that and to organize it all. So anyways, this book is called Traction. I read it every single year, actually, between Christmas and New Year's. I read it again just to sort of like set myself up for the next year, because even though I've read it 7 times now, it's like I'm still finding things from like, oh yeah, we're not doing that part very well. We could lean into this. So there's a good book if you're interested in business and sort of organizational development.
I love it. Traction by who?
Traction by Gino Wickman.
Awesome. We're going to put a link in the show notes so people can find that.
Yeah.
That's great. All right, this is my favorite. This is my favorite question. I'm like, Ivan, you take all these questions. I just want the last one because it's my favorite.
Do so much work.
Okay, so you're going to have a great answer for this because you know every business in town.
Every single one.
And we're not playing favorites here, but let's say that Brittany has a hidden gem in Eugene. What is your hidden gem? It could be a business. It could be a bar, restaurant. It could be a winery. It could be a park. It could be an event. It could be any little hidden gem in our community that if somebody rolled into town, you're like, you have to check this out.
I'm going to cheat here. Y'all, I'm going to give you like an experience that has a handful of things included, okay?
Okay, all right.
So if I were to say to someone who's new to town, like, we actually did this not that long ago, a couple weekends ago. It was a beautiful Saturday. I was like, what is my ideal Saturday? I would start at McMiniman's on the river, on the patio.
Yeah.
They have great drinks. They have great food. It's a beautiful setting. And we start at McMiniman's, we have lunch, and then we walk down the path towards Alton Baker, cross the Peter DeFazio footbridge over the river, walk along and experience a new riverfront park down by the river. There's I'm excited about what the future of that's going to look like. They're sort of phase 1 of what that park is, and it's beautiful and wonderful, and there's going to be so much more. But then I would walk actually across the other way to go towards like Skinner's Butte Park. Love that park. Now that I have a little kid, I experience it, and I love it even more. It's got like a really fun play area. But then I would walk down towards the market area and go to Farmers Union Coffee. It's my favorite.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
They have such a fun it's so good.
It's
just quaint, and it's right there in the middle of everything. And the owners are good friends. I met them through the chamber. They are just great community guys, and they've just created a really friendly, welcoming environment at that coffee shop. So there you go. There's my perfect little Saturday stroll.
Beautiful.
Well, that is an experience.
There you go.
Yeah, love that.
I could pick like 3 dozen more of those
I'm
for
sure.
the record, but there you go.
There's a lot of amazing things in our community, but that sounds like a wonderful weekend
It's
right
fun.
there.
It makes you enjoy Eugene a lot. Walking through that, you're like, wow, we have this massive, beautiful river right through the middle of our town, and we can walk from one side of the community to the other just like that. It really makes you like take a deep breath and say like, Eugene's awesome.
Absolutely.
Well, with that in mind, do you have a message for our community, the folks that are listening here?
Yeah.
Do you have a call to action or something to ponder? What's on your mind that you would share with our community right now?
Yeah. Eugene is awesome. We have so much going for us. I feel like it's really easy to get bogged down by all the challenges. And frankly, in my job, I get bogged down by all the challenges, right? I don't get a lot of people calling me saying, Eugene's great. But I think it's really important. The only way you have the energy to address the things that are really challenging and these what feel like immovable obstacles is to expose yourself to the things about this community that are awesome and make it worth fighting for the hard stuff, right? It's like if you didn't have anything in this community that you liked, why would you even care about saving it, right? Why would you care about finding, solutions to all of these problems? And so giving yourself the time and space to remind you why you are even still here. It's a choice. You can choose to be anywhere. We can, of course, it's we're privileged to be able to live here, and we're privileged to choose to live here. But it's good enough that you want to keep making it better. And so finding the time to remind yourself why this place is awesome, and then use that energy to help solve some of these big, hairy challenges that we have to figure out.
I love that. Find a way to deepen your roots.
Yeah, deepen your roots. Good.
Thank you so much.
This was great. Thanks for being on the podcast,
Thank you
Brittany.
guys so much for having me.
Wow, what a great episode. Man, why do we always start like this? Who write these things?
You do. You know, they are great episodes. They're great stories. We get to learn so much about the people in our community and sharing resources. So this episode is really cool in particular because we have been wanting Brittany on the podcast.
Yeah.
You know, it's been kind of a long time coming. She had, a baby earlier in the year. So, she was tied up there. And of course, she's the CEO, right?
It's hard to get on a schedule.
And, finding time to eat lunch, right? So one thing that we wanted to bring up is that, there's a couple of really good resources that the community can take part of. One is the Eugene Young Professionals.
Absolutely.
Which, we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for that organization.
Yeah.
That's how we met. That's, we went to the Eugene Young Professionals Summit, and that's how we started talking about this podcast. And we've had so many different opportunities to network with people in our community and be a part of even the leadership council, right?
Yeah, honestly, it is just a great opportunity for, people that are wanting to get more engaged with their community. Honestly, before Young Professionals, I wouldn't have even know where to get started. I just remember hearing about the summit, going out, checking it out, and absolutely fell in love with just the idea of being around people that actually care as much as you do. And that was something that Brittany brought up during our interview, right?
So true.
So, dug in a little bit deeper, then found out about the council. And if you're looking for a way to put things into action and take a leadership position, look into the council. Honestly, it is awesome. You get to put together a whole summit, and you get to see how all of that comes together. But as far as what it does for the community, it is great for going out there, networking, getting to learn people and learn skills yourself. So.
Right. And this episode's airing in December, so I know they're going to be looking for people to join the Leadership Council. So definitely go to eugeneyp.com to learn about that. Mm-hmm. The other program is the Business After Hours.
Yes.
It takes place, as you can imagine, after hours. But it's great for businesses, business owners to get together and network and connect with each other, share resources, share ideas. And honestly, I think a lot of magic happens there because people are there to make change, right? In their business, in their community, right? So such a great thing. And you can go check that out on the Chamber website as well.
That is all that we have for you today. Thank you so much for joining us. And as always, find any of the resources that we're sharing. Find all of the details in the description below. So see you all on the next one.
And happy holidays.
This episode of the Eugene Morning Hustle podcast was brought to you by the Eugene Area Chamber of Commerce and sponsored by Ivan Torres of Business Block Studios and Brandon Miller Voiceover. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel where you get your podcasts and follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn to stay in the know. If you have any questions, topics, or guests you'd like us to dive into, send us a voice message on the Eugene Chamber Instagram page, and we'll feature you and your question on a future episode. Or shoot us an email at podcast@eugenechamber.com. Till next time, Eugene.